The Bobby Kennedy hearing today before the Senate was so incredibly important and so critical because it spoke so much to me about who I am and what I believe in and what's critical in my particular worldview. And Bobby Kennedy, in his testimony, represents something so important. He represents us. He is a freak. He is a guy who is a freak, a person who goes against the grain, is extremely varied, kind of weird, doesn't fit in, but does, had his problems, very unique, very different. Just when you think you've got him figured out, he takes on something which they loved when he went after the companies that dared to destroy the water and the rivers and they said, "Good for you, Bobby. That's great. Good for you. Thank you, Bobby. Thank you. Yes." And then he said, one of the most important things, he says, I don't want mercury in fish, but that doesn't mean I don't like fish or I want to ban fish. He wants the mercury out of the fish. And when he talked about thimerosal and the vaccines, it was the thimerosal, it was the mercury, it wasn't the vaccine. He never talked about the efficacy of immunization. It wasn't about the vaccine. His kids were vaccinated. He doesn't have a problem with the vaccine. And it doesn't matter how many times he says this, because the radical left, the big pharma-owned radical left, say to them, now listen, remember, pretend as though you don't understand that he never said that. Say that he did. You are going to be in this focus of vaccination like it is next to godliness, like it is next to patriotism, that you must show a complete and total obeisance to the notion of vaccinations. If you don't show complete and total fealty and obeisance and faith in and this almost this strange adoration, this unquestioning connection, this addiction, dare I say, you're evil, wrong, sick, weird. It's the strangest thing. He never, ever, ever, ever said, nor do I believe you've said this, and I've never said this, that the notion of the vaccine does not work, that immunization has been a fraud, that it doesn't work, that it's alchemy, it's oh God, some weird kind of witchcraft. You know what I mean? It's oh God, not phrenology, but anyway, it's this is the way it's been. He has talked about things, and he has inspired many people. So many in our group who think that he has said, or that vaccines don't work, that it's mythical. I want you to stand by for a second, my friends. I want you to listen very carefully to why this is so important. This is a really important subject. And I want you to listen like you've never listened before. And make sure you are subscribed to Lionel Nation. But first, listen to this. New reports reveal that the average person has $8,674 in credit card debt. Plus, the total average consumer debt is a shocking $104,215 between mortgages, auto loans, student loans, credit cards, and unsecured loans. Unfortunately, without outside assistance, many will continue digging themselves deeper and deeper into the hole of debt. Now, I've advised and counseled friends and clients for years who want to take back control of individual debt about this secret weapon that has helped so many consolidate everything owed into one affordable monthly payment. They even helped negotiate a settlement agreement that will allow you to pay less than the total balance. Listen, they settled over $275 million in debt, and they've helped people become debt-free in an average of 28 months. I've had such an incredible experience referring clients and friends that I wanted to partner with them here and introduce their services to you, my loyal Lionel Nation family. If you want a helping hand to get out of debt, I absolutely, positively, and strenuously recommend booking a free consultation now by going to nodebtwithlionel.com. Look at the address. Once again, that's nodebtwithlionel.com. Use the link I've provided under the title. Listen to me. You can take control and learn how to get out of debt now. Some of us get into these tropes and memes and these ways of thinking. It drives me nuts because I'm thinking that's not what was said. But people think, well, it is. It's like, no, that's not it. You think it is, but no, that's not the subject. That's not what happened. That's not what this is about. They'll get into things and they won't be able to explain why. Oh, I had a conversation the other day regarding the World Economic Forum. And this one person could not explain what the World Economic Forum did, but because this person was a member of our way of thinking and was a conspiracist and part of the conspiratorium, this person thought it was an article of faith to say things about the World Economic Forum without really understanding, just knowing that they're evil and that Klaus Schwab is scary looking. The stuff that Harari has said regarding AI was brilliant, even though he said other things that were crazy. So you can't pretend to understand things if you really don't. Sometimes you'll find that there are just parts of things that you agree with or don't agree with, or that there are other things that you might find make a lot of sense. Pilgrim says you can remove heavy metals with chelation therapy. Thank you. We're not talking about that. Thimerosal, as you know, was the preservative that was used in that which he was concerning. There was, because they didn't want to go from this bottle to this bottle to that, they would put them all in one and they would reuse these bottles. And in order to keep the vaccine pure and clean, they would use these adjuvants or that's what it was. We're not talking about chelation therapy, but thank you. And what I also find out is that for some reason, people feel that they are, I know a lot about this, and I don't even feel even remotely able to give expert enough opinions about this. I have read more things about nutrition than you, and I still am learning. The more I learn, the less I know. It's true. I love arcane words. I have books of you call it vocabulary, but words and arcane words, and the more I know, the more I realize I don't know. It's a complicated issue. And what we do is we realize there is big pharma. There is the Israeli lobby. It's okay, the climate lobby. Big agri. There was the GMO, Bayer and Monsanto. The Monsanto. There are these groups. There are folks who get behind things that they think they kind of understand, but they don't. And they will think that if you're a no-vax or a anti-vaxxer, there we go, an anti-vaxxer, just like if you were a truther. I thought it was very good, a truther. And people love to hate you, like what's currently going on. I hope you watched this video I did. Joy Behar, Caitlin Collins, and Whoopi Goldberg went after America's sweetheart, Caroline Levitt, because they're three hags who are jealous. They're bitches, snitches, kvetches, typical mean-spirited, mean girl. Anyway, I talk about that, and they get into it because I know how these people think. Bobby Kennedy is a weird dude. He is this fellow that I want to know what is the style of the button down? It's a smaller collar. It's not a regular, like a Brooks Brothers kind of regular conventional collar length. It's a smaller. That's his style. That's me. Here is Bobby today, replete with his spasmodic dysphonia, which I'll explain to you why that's important. Listen.
Restore trust in the public health agencies. We need transparency. I want to say something about what you first said. When I launched my campaign, it was about uniting Americans, Democrats and Republicans. There's no issue that should unite us more than this chronic health epidemic. There's no such thing as Republican children or Democratic children. These are our kids. 66% of them are damaged. I know what a healthy kid looks like because I had so many of them in my family. I didn't know anybody with a food allergy growing up, peanut allergy. Why do 5 of my kids have allergies? Why are we seeing these explosions in diabetes, rheumatoid arthritis, neurological diseases, depression, all of these things that are related to toxics in the environment? Why can't we just agree with each other to put differences about so many issues, intractable issues aside, and say, we're going to end this? I don't think anybody is going to be able to do this like I have because of my peculiar experience, because I've litigated against these agencies. When you litigate against them, you get a PhD in corporate capture and how to unravel it. I've written 6 books about these agencies. I know a lot about them and I know how to fix it. And there's nobody who will fix it the way that I do because I'm not scared of vested interests. I don't care. I'm not here because I want a position or a job. I have a very good life and a happy family. This is something I don't need. I want to do this because we're going to fix it. And the other thing is we are attracting now a caliber of people to HHS like never before in history. And they're entrepreneurs, they're disruptors, they're innovators of immense talent that are walking away, many of them from growing concerns. They're not coming there for position. They're coming there because they want to save our country. And they're from across the political spectrum. And all these Democrats are opposed to me for partisan issues. They used to be my friends. Agreed with me on all the environmental issues that I've been working on for my whole career. Now they're against me because anything that President Trump does, any decision he makes, has to be lamp.
Yep. absolutely. Lampooned, besmirched. Yes, yes, yes. That's where we are today. And there is something to be said. As I mentioned before, let me explain something about.
Derided,
Oh my God.
discredited,
What happened?
marginalized, vilified.
Oh, sorry about that. Okay. Let me explain something I said before. I mentioned Caroline Levitt. The three women, if Joy Behar and Whoopi and Caitlin Collins did not believe that this young blonde woman was attractive, you would not be hearing a tenth of the ferocity of the hate targeted and pointed towards her. Believe me. Believe me. You'll hear people talk about the subject matter and that sort of thing, but there is something about her. You must understand the cattiness, the bitchiness, the meanness. You must understand. Let me give you an example of something. Mark my words, one day you're going to be hearing some very serious mental health or substance abuse or something deep-seated regarding this weirdo, this Jack Schlossberg. This is Caroline Kennedy's son, who thinks he's his uncle, John Kennedy Jr., who has this very ostentatious, very, dare I say, effeminate kind of a, which is fine, but this alter ego, and he makes these things, these videos or whatever they are, and it shows a meanness, a pettiness, but his own internal demons. Bobby Kennedy Jr. has spasmodic dysphonia. I think his sister Carrie has that, and it's that kind of okay. It's something that I'm thinking must cause him. If he always sounds like he's painful. Listen to Jack Schlossberg, this mean little girl, mock him because he doesn't have enough idea of the substance. Just like his mother, Caroline, was saying he likes predator birds because he's a predator. I don't know what this means.
Hey, buddy, I'm trying to figure out the right present to get Donald Trump for the inauguration. So I found a really rare animal and killed it, and I'm gonna give it to him.
Is this funny? This is this weird kind of a thing. You mark my words. Remember what I told you about Matt Gaetz? Remember what I told you? Matt Gaetz told you, be careful, Matt Gaetz. And you go, oh, Matt Gaetz was, Donald Trump did his best, but I know what I'm talking about. This guy is, leave it at that. One more thing about Bobby Kennedy. Listen to his words.
Today, Americans' overall health is in grievous condition. Over 70% of adults and a third of children are overweight or obese. Diabetes is 10 times more prevalent than it was during the 1960s. Cancer among young people is rising by 1 or 2% a year. Autoimmune diseases, neurodevelopmental disorders, Alzheimer's, asthma, ADHD, depression, addiction, and a host of other physical and mental health conditions are all on the rise, some of them exponentially.
There was a woman today, her name Tina, by the way. Before I forget, RK says he and others should make a distinction between the science of immunology versus the efficacy or harm of a product, the vaccine. That's exactly what I'm saying. Exactly. I do not, RK, and I thank you, I do not question how a syringe works. What you put in the syringe is the problem, not the syringe. But are you filling it with heroin? Or are you filling it with penicillin? I mean, there's a distinction. And Veritas, where have you been, Joe DiMaggio? Good day, mate. Long time no see. I've been crook as, I don't know what that means. That's that Aussie speak, which I find most charming, and I thank you. So yes, we're talking about that. But there's this thing now. Let me explain to you what it is about him as well. All they care about is the vaccine. This, what was her name? Tina, this senator. He said, do you understand? Many people think that SSRIs, this is a funny thing, SSRIs they've cautioned, be very careful about them because they have been linked with self-harm and crimes involving violence, which is very interesting when you consider it's used as an antidepressant. And what's also interesting is that it is listed as one of the first warnings, and you have to list the warnings in the most frequent and the most dangerous. For example, you can't put the most frequent side effect, or effect as I call them, and put it dead last. No, nobody's going to go through that. You put them in order, and they fight for this. So if you ever read the literature, or if you take an antidepressant or an SSRI, a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, Prozac and others, if you read the instructions, you will find that the drug companies will fight tooth and nail to even, believe me, to even have that warning. So if that warning's there, believe me, they tried everything. It must really be sincere. And he never said that SSRIs cause that. Many people I've met, people in the conspiratorium, believe that somebody said that SSRIs cause this. No, science is very, very, very weird about this. When people do things that are of a psychiatric nature, including self-harm and others, you have to ask yourself the question, well, why are they doing this? First and foremost, you have to ask yourself, a person is taking this particular type of medication. Why? Because of a psychiatric or behavioral problem. So people who have the propensity for psychiatric and behavioral problems themselves are finding a side effect. So how do you necessarily exclude and filter out psychiatric propensities for harm and the like, which would have manifested themselves anyway, and those caused by or exacerbated by SSRIs? Very difficult. Don't know. If you were taking cold medication and self-harm or something, that might be another story. I don't like this. I don't know what these things are. Anyway, now, there are people who will still say SSRIs are bad. They're bad. What are you talking about? They've never studied. They've read a couple of natural this blog and this guy here. I say, no. SSRIs have saved lives. Antidepressants have given people back, many people, their lives. Something that exercise therapy or diet or ice baths or nothing can do. And again, people are talking out of their arse. You've heard of this as well. People will say statins. Statins for unstable plaque have saved more lives than you can imagine. I mean, it just, it's mind-boggling. It might not, could be overused, of course. But the notion for unstable plaque, which is the killer in atherosclerotic, most people have the first coronary incident is death. Most. It is really scary stuff. But yet they'll sit back and they'll read something, like all of a sudden they'll read about seed oils. All of a sudden, some guy says seed oils, and they just jump onto it and say, okay, where did you get this from? I don't know. It's if 2 or 3 people in my routine say, all right. I mean, you could argue about, I'm thinking, that's interesting. Let me learn more about this. I was reading somebody who said how coffee leaches magnesium. I mean, just, okay, stop. We must understand something. This is not our area. It's interesting. Go look, go read, go talk, go find out. Find people. What is it that you think? Are you going to drop dead if you do this? I have no idea. I have no idea. But people believe this sense of this weird form. I don't know what it is. This kind of this instant expertise. It fascinates me. It fascinates me. Now, I will tell you this much, which I want to also bring to your attention, which I can't emphasize enough, which I think is more important than virtually anything. And that is the following. Oops, hang on a minute. There we go. Name it. There we go. Okay. One of the things which I've been telling people about for the most part, which I think is critical, as you can well imagine, is the notion of emergency food. Ready for this? My Patriot Supplies, preparewithlionel.com, now have EMP, electromagnetic pulse protectors. All of a sudden, some blast, God forbid, a Carrington class blast or whatever, or just something that is directed. You need something to protect yourself. They've got everything you can imagine. People who've thought about everything from emergency foods, of course, this 4-week emergency food supply special, $50 off with 6 free bonuses. If you order today, 2 more days until the month. I don't know what they're going to do next. Lock in this deal now. But that's the thing that makes the most sense of them all. And I one time, I'll never forget, I think it was one of the first times I ever mentioned preparewithlionel.com. Somebody said, I have a fishing pole, or I've got a dehydrator. And I'm thinking to myself, do you know how insane that is? I'm talking about 30 days of no food and you've got a little pole? You're going to go out to the creek? I mean, I realized there are people like that I just have to accept. MyPillow.com is another one. Greatest products, luxuriation, you can imagine, to allow you to enjoy pillows and pillowcases and pillows and slippers, but also Mike Lindell, what he has been through and how he keeps fighting a la Trump. MyPillow.com, promo code Lionel, and preparewithlionel.com. Makes sense to me. Makes complete and total sense to me. Now, this feller, Bobby Kennedy, today was absolutely superb, showcasing and letting me know and everybody else know why he's perfect for the job. HHS. Do you remember any of these folks? Do you remember do you remember any of anybody who caused quite a stir? Do you? I don't. He delivered one of the most powerful performances in the face of this relentless opposition from the predictable, the usual subjects, the big-pharma-backed radical left. I mean, he stood his ground. And I don't know whether you like him, if that's what this is about. Do you consider the fact that do you like him? I don't know. I've never met him. I don't know if I'd like him. I don't know if I'd like any of these people. It's not about liking him. I like what he has to say. And we need this. And if you can't see, why is there such a stranglehold by virtue of Big Pharma? Why do we have so many advertisements, adverts for medication? Why? Why is this even happening remotely? I don't understand any of this stuff. And not only are these senators eager to tear him apart and tear him down, but it's this corrupt, profit-driven, these health policies. And by the by, I hope you have subscribed to my newsletter. And I have a link right there for you. And it's pretty doggone good. Today's was, well, rather comprehensive, to say the least. So make sure you sign up. Now, from the moment that the hearing began, and I saw it was like 10 o'clock this morning, senators like Raphael Warnock, as I call him, Bernie Sanders, and Pocahontas took turns throwing loaded, demented questions, snide remarks, tired, hackneyed accusations. And their strategy was clear. You saw it, I saw it, we all saw it. To paint him as some kind of a dangerous lunatic, some anti-vaccine radical, to smear his credibility, smear his name, and protect their beloved pharmaceutical overlords. These people couldn't care less about immunology, Pasteur, antibodies. Never. It's not about that. Nothing is about that. But also there's a cult. Do you remember this? Do you remember during the Rona, how all of a sudden people got into this thing? I got mine, stay at home. Remember on Facebook? I got this stupid couple I know, and they were like showing, look at this, we got our book. And I think, it's good for you, but why are you bragging about this? Because it became the thing to brag about. Like tattoos. All of a sudden, tattoos overnight. People just marred and disfigured themselves because they thought it was cool. Overnight. It's the most incredible thing I've ever seen in my life. I don't. And then the interrogations today. It was this platform to basically expose this. It was him because he dared to keep it up. They loved him when he talked about rivers. They loved him when he talked about climate. They loved him when he talked about, and I think the birds of prey and the raptors, I think that is so interesting. But then they started making me crazy. Remember the bear, and he was a heroin addict. Okay, do you want me to go through the list of those people on in Congress? Shall I go through the Kennedy, Ted, that degenerate? Shall we go through that again? Bobby and Jack, who were they tagged that Jackie Kennedy more than you. Do you have any idea of what we're talking about? And the Kennedys, including Schlossberg, never ever indicated anything about trying to find out why their government knew and hid information as to the real sources and those involved in the removal of Robert and Jack Kennedy. They've been so their whole thing is don't make any waves. Don't make any waves. It's incredible. And you got to ask, why would Caroline think I'm going to lend my name? Caroline, do you have any, including that weird son of yours, do you have any idea? Caroline also doesn't look well. Some people can just handle it better. You know what I mean? She is so boring. You New Yorkers will remember this. Remember when she wanted to run for senator and she attempted it? It was so bad. She was so boring. She was such a drip. So dead, she was dead. Her pilot light was off. It was incredible. But the senators had no interest at all in America's exploding chronic disease epidemics. That epidemic they don't care about. Corrupt government agencies, a health system that prioritizes profit over people. They never cared about that. It was about the vaccine. And Senator Warnock, he tried. They handed him this. He doesn't know. The first thing they said, listen, take this. Here's your script. Just read the questions. Go through this a couple of days. You're going to be asking this. You're going to pretend you know this. Okay. So they tried to corner him over past statements comparing the rate of vaccine-related injuries to, I think it was Nazi atrocities or something like that. So Bobby Kennedy calmly and eloquently dismantled the accusation by saying, quote, this is a quote he said, I wasn't comparing the CDC to Nazi death camps. I was making a point about the scale of harm being done to our children. And he's right. Warnock didn't know what the hell he was talking about because they gave him the script to read. He didn't know anything about it. They just said, you're going to be here. Okay. We get our money from these people. Okay. And this is what we say. All right, fair enough. Now, for decades, Bobby Kennedy Jr. has been raising awareness about the dangers of skyrocketing chronic illnesses. He talks about it all the time. He said that when there were some doctors who never saw either a case of either pediatric diabetes or cancer, which is true. Pediatric oncology was just unheard of. Peanut allergies, autism. Do you remember autism? Spectrum. I'm on the spectrum. Everybody's on the spectrum. I never saw this. This is the most incredible thing in the world. Something's going on now. Did the senators care about that, including Warnock and Pocahontas? No. They know where their money's coming. That's why today when the president, and I got to say, be careful with this, if there's this idea of being against Israel as being anti-Semitic, that if somebody could say, I believe that Hamas, I'm not saying this, but they could say, I believe that Hamas is the best political or military means to address the Nakba and to address apartheid or whatever it is. But I have no thoughts whatsoever as to the legitimacy of the Jewish faith. That's anti-Semitism. They've conflated this, just like they've conflated questioning the efficacy of a particular vaccine protocol or a vaccine versus whether vaccines work. We do this all the time. And they're hoping that you are ignorant enough not to ask the right questions. Warnock, the senator, attempted to misrepresent Bobby, as did others. And it only, if you think about it, it only highlighted, it kind of showed everybody the total disconnect and how the Senate really cares nothing about the issues that are facing millions of Americans. But Bobby wasn't content to play merely defense the whole time. He went on times on the offensive. He's very, very good, exposing the role of processed and chemically laden foods in America's health crisis. Now, in the old days, even processed food doesn't make any sense. When you would say, well, if it comes in a box or something, it's been, processed, it's been, all of the, like, for example, olive oil and olives, processed, obviously. Olives are great. Olive oil is a process of it. Today's process, different story. They're adding things to it, which, if I didn't know better, are deliberately, deliberately harmful. Chemically, you've heard about the red dyes? Bobby Kennedy said, when my uncle was president, he always likes to say that, only 3% of Americans were obese. This is what he told the committee. And today, 74% are either overweight or obese. Michael Greger from nutritionfacts.org said that the real BMI number is 18 to 22, not 18 to 25. People are woeful. People say, what are you doing? People have this idea of how much weight they should carry. You are, believe it or not, we are far. And they think somehow that if somebody's big and works out, that weight is somehow different. Now, granted, muscle versus fat, different. And another thing, too, is if Bobby Kennedy thinks that I think a 70-year-old man who's doing all this weight work is not having a little help with this, come on. This is Fredo Cuomo all over again. If you can't see this, if I have to explain this to you, it's like a plastic surgeon. 70-year-old men, normally, it's one thing to, be in shape or whatever, but to put on a lot of muscle mass, it doesn't work like that. I'm sorry. And nothing to do with testosterone and all that. It's a different story. In any event, he didn't blame, poor diet necessarily. He laid out the reality of being poisoned by a food supply. By the way, I wish he'd have mentioned, GMOs, which he didn't. But there are additives and chemicals, 10,000 of them, which he said are harmful or dangerous or combinations thereof, to be compared to just 400 that are allowed in Europe. Why is that? Why is our country becoming destroyed because, by these things? He said, by the way, it's an interesting quote. He said, our country, his quote, he goes, our country isn't going to be destroyed because we get the marginal tax rate wrong. It's going to be destroyed if we continue down the trajectory of chronic disease. Nobody cared about that. Bernie Sanders wanted to talk about onesies from an organization that he's not a part of anymore. How can the radical left, how can they care about that? They can't. Somebody was saying, do you realize that you're responsible for a decline in the number of vaccine whatever? Is like, are you kidding me? Is that what you're worried about? Why? Have you not been paying attention? So we know where their bread is buttered. I mean, we know how that works. We all know this. It's obvious. Pocahontas, fantastic. She does this feigned anger bit, which nobody buys. Her pathetic attempt to frame the RFK argument or him as some kind of a grifter for his involvement in lawsuits against pharmaceutical companies. You're kidding me. These people who all they do is make money on insider trading, and they have the unmitigated audacity to say, I think one of the reasons why you're doing it is for your own monetary benefits. She grilled him on whether he would personally benefit from pending lawsuits if confirmed as HHS secretary. A lot of stuff he did, I believe, with glyphosate and others as well. They imply that he's in it for financial gain. And he said very specifically, he said, I certainly commit to the fact that when I'm secretary, he said, I'm not going to be enjoying this. Or whether he puts it in some kind of a blind trust, I have no idea. But he says, I'm not going to have any financial stake during the tenure, unlike these people with their stocks. Now, Pocahontas and her allies, as you know, are happy to line their campaign coffers, line their pockets with big pharma money. They don't care about that. That's different. That's different. And for once, somebody with integrity basically stepped into a position and said, you're the hypocrites. You don't know what you're talking about. Bobby Kennedy today, I'm listening to this. He made it clear that he and President Trump, while they may, quote, agree to disagree, I think they're climate or something, whatever that means. They share a unified mission. And this is a critical part. This is what I think people should be paying attention to make America healthy again. And in a moment that was as, believe it or not, almost refreshing. I don't know if he knew what he was doing, as it was unexpected. Even Bernie Sanders admitted that he supports Kennedy's Make America Healthy Again vision, even though he was confused about onesies or something that he was very angry about. And that's because despite the left's constant vilification of Bobby, especially by his family and that weird, creepy nephew of his, the facts remain consistent. What he's saying is undeniable. Chronic illness is ravaging this country. It is like an internal, like kind of a domestic, almost a nutrition terrorism. This pharmaceutical industrial complex, it's got to stop. Endless prescriptions and reactive treatments. Go to a doctor. Look what we've done to kids. Now, listen, I am not throwing away psychiatric medication. I'm not suggesting, I'm not one of those people. But I do know that there are some people, a lot of people, who basically have taken things they don't need. That's all. Just like there's just things you don't need. And that's a different story altogether. Now, Bobby Kennedy, with you see Cheryl Hines and behind him, he understands that prevention and clean food and all that stuff, or transparency, are the keys to reversing this trend. And believe it or not, when people have an idea, Americans love to talk about nutrition, but they really don't. They have this idea. The nutrition part, they're more into things like protein and, quote, energy, but they're not into the nutrition. And I love people who will say things, for example, like, well, you should take this at a bottle. Well, why don't you take the food that has that mineral or vitamin in it? Wow, that's, phytonutrients versus bioavailability. They don't know. So and I was like, look, it's a free country. Do whatever you want to do. Do whatever you want to do. I have never seen so many experts. Oh my God. But the one thing that everybody agrees on is that we are so out of shape today. And he talked about radical transparency. I love this. They've confirmed radical transparency, vowing to expose and maybe reform. And this is what scares me. The deeply entrenched conflicts of interest between government agencies and the industries they're supposed to regulate. They don't want to hear about that. He told Senator Ron Johnson, quote, I've litigated against these agencies. When you litigate against these agencies, you get a PhD in corporate capture and how to unravel it, he said. So I like Bobby Kennedy Jr. He isn't just another bureaucrat. He really doesn't need this, obviously. He's fought battles. He's learned. I think he's very sincere about helping kids, about making us better. I really do. And that's precisely why pharmaceutical people hate him and their allies in Congress. They hate him. They want him and his they want to crush the mindset that would have you ever question their sagacity. To ever think that, maybe this stuff isn't, maybe they're to blame. No. They want you just to listen. He also brought up AI nurses to help understaffed rural hospitals. I think that's genius. He wasn't engaging in some kind of science fiction. He was proposing a practical solution to a real problem. I think it makes complete and total sense. The radical left, and I think it's almost ridiculous, it's kind of redundant to say it's sort of tautological, but the radical left claims to care about, rural communities. Oh, they care about these people. They should have applauded him for thinking outside the box. Instead, they sneered because they can't handle the idea that maybe some of our solutions don't have to come from bloated government programs. Remember, we talk about AI. AI has a potential, if you don't keep an eye on it, for doing some nasty stuff, but it's wonderful. It can be done. It's oh my God, it could help so many people. And not WebMD, but AI, where people can actually use technology that maybe will help them. By the way, go to any of your doctors, go to your internist, internal medicine, anybody, especially cardiologists, and ask them, what should I eat? What should I not eat? What are the effects of this on my body? What are the studies? What do you know? Ask any doctor what they have learned about their nutrition curriculum in medical school. And all of them will tell you, without exception, it was non-existent. Food, for most of us, we always thought that, well, if you eat it and it tastes good, and a lot of people like it, and if it makes you feel good, it's great. And then they'll come up with these to prove it. Well, you see, this is brings us, this is, moderation. We love to say that in this country. Moderation. Moderation. Nobody's moderate. They talk about it. But they don't. And I know this. So how do you expect anything to happen unless you get somebody like a Kennedy in there to change the way people think collectively? He's and I like the fact that he's proposing innovation and efficiency. And that's something that these people do not want. I like him. They're going to give him a hard time because Trump likes him, but also he represents they were told by their constituents, by their big pharma constituents, you make sure you destroy him. And it wasn't just that they had defense of his record or what he thinks. It was about a vision for the future. And he said for the first time, how many times did you ever hear anybody talk about chronic disease? Never, never, never. He showed that, we talk about it sometimes a little bit. We talked about Joe Biden being, neurologically. John Fetterman, he went through, I think, some kind of an ischemic attack or a stroke or whatever that was. I mean, he had aphasia, and then he's doing much, much better now. We see it all along, especially as America gets older and as people in Congress get older. He understands, and I think more people do, I think inherently know that the root of American health problems require being really tough about this. And he is not going to be beholden to big pharma. Oh my God. Remember years ago when Monsanto, what was his name? Was it not Michael Taylor or something Taylor or whatever? But he went from FDA head or whatever to Monsanto and back. I mean, it was like a revolving. Big Agra is bigger than anything you can imagine. Do you know most kids today will never have had a non-GMO piece of corn in their life? That the corn syrup, corn chips, the beets that provide the sugar source, the wheat, soy sometimes, all of those are NGOs. They're not real. They're not natural. They are GMOs, genetically modified organisms of food. They're not real. They don't exist. Not only that, they're Roundup resistant. They're glyphosate. I mean, there's just so much. And people will say to you, well, I don't think organic is really, and that word I think is overused a lot. Nutrition, nobody knows anything about that. They don't know anything about it. I was telling somebody the other day, this I thought was very interesting, kind of counterintuitive. One of the best things you can buy, if you can, is frozen vegetables and fruits because they're picked and immediately flash frozen. Whereas the stuff you see on the counter, even at farmers markets, they're not fresh. No way. Maybe depending on farmers market, but if you see the store, oh no, they've been gassed and they've been, God bless Bobby Kennedy. I like the fact that he's a maverick. I like the fact that he's willing to take these people on. And he is going up against some of the biggest people you have ever seen or imagined. Pilgrim says, will virology be taken away from the deep state? Virology? Taken away? I don't know what that means. I don't know. Crypto says they made an industry of lawfare within the medical establishments. To an extent, maybe. But listen, all I know is God bless him. And the very fact that Donald Trump, I never thought he would have, because he eats maybe the worst diet of anybody. Diet Coke? Oh my God. Anyway, it's not lethal, but I'm surprised he would even want to get into that area. Why did he? I just think he likes maybe to pick challenges, pick fights, but I think he likes also to do things that he thinks are incredibly, how do I say this? Things that are intuitively that make sense. Like this. Let me ask you a question. When's the last time you checked your devices for malware? Malware attacks have increased 643% since 2020, with approximately 10 million personal and corporate devices compromised with data stealing malware in just the last year alone. Additionally, 19.8% of computers face at least one malware attack annually. This emphasizes the critical need for individual users to protect themselves, their devices, and their data. This is why I use today's sponsor, Virtual Shield Antivirus Pro, and I love the peace of mind it gives me. Virtual Shield Antivirus Pro is an award-winning antivirus with real-time protection, malware removal, ad blocking, scheduled scans, multi-device protection, and more that stops malicious downloads in their tracks. Without Virtual Shield Antivirus Pro, I would risk my finances, banking details, personal data, and more getting into the hands of cyber criminals. Thanks again to Virtual Shield Antivirus Pro for sponsoring today's extravaganza. And do yourself a favor and sign up for a free 7-day free trial, of Virtual Shield Antivirus Pro during their early Black Friday sale happening now, and get up to 75% off. Yes, you heard that. Up to 75% off. Only at virtualshield.com/Lionel. Once again, that's virtualshield.com/Lionel. I gave you a link right now of one of the best nutrition sites there is, called nutritionfacts.org. And it is just incredible. The amount of, there is one, it deals with the idea of which countries produce the most excreta, egesta, poop, I think it's referred to sometimes. And the country that by and large is hands down, interesting phrase, puts out more volume, I mean, like you wouldn't believe, is the island of Tonga, I believe. And number one for the worst output, U.S., with New York being number one of that. Subject people never want to talk about. Never. Remember when you were a kid, you ever hear somebody with IBS, irritable bowel ileitis, colitis, gut health, biota problems, C. diff, and all the gut health, gut flora? I mean, just hard. Never heard of any of that. Do you ever eat sauerkraut? No. Do you ever do anything that has any kind of a sauerkraut or any kind of a pickled version of anything? No, you don't. Anything? No. Anything fermented for gut health? I talked to you about fecal transplantation. Nobody talks about that. They talk a good game about a lot of other stuff, but they don't really, whatever. So God bless Bobby Kennedy. God bless Bobby Kennedy. Make sure you follow Mrs. L at Lynn's Warriors. Make sure you also go to, I did a video today on Lionel Legal. Sign up for that as well. And I also did an indictment against the Herodins, the Biddies, the cat fighting, the catty, just the usual troika, these horrible folks at, dare I say, The View, and Caitlin Collins, angry, who they just hate. Caroline Levitt, who I think is just superb. And make sure you follow us here at Lionel Nation and sign up for that. I've got the link right there for the newsletter, whatever you call it, or email. Thank you, my friends. And to our dear friends tonight, our contributors, Pilgrim Media, RK, Veritas, and Crypto, thank you so much for your thoughts and your kindness. Have a great and a glorious day, my friends. We'll see you tomorrow morning at 8 a.m., not 9 a.m., 8 a.m. Same bad time, sort of, an hour earlier, right here at Lionel Nation. Have a great night, my friends. Don't ever change. And don't forget the monkey's dead. The show's over. Sue ya. Dad.